Appreciate being out here this evening. A little bit about me is I do work with small business owners and helping them to use the internet more proactively and being able to reach their target audience. But before I get into a little bit more about my story, first of all, I know Bess had asked you before about how many were blogging, but how many of you are actually blogging for business purposes? Okay, all right, quite a few, good. How many of you want to make sure that your target audience reads your blog? Okay, good, more hands, that's good. I would think everybody, even if you're not blogging for business. Well, you're in the right place, so I'm glad of that because that's what I'm going to help you do today and explain a little bit about other ways that you can make sure that people find your blog online. I am Gloria Rand, and I want to welcome you to 3 SEO mistakes that bloggers make. Talk a little louder? I'm sorry. Okay, I'll use my projecting voice. I do sing in the choir, so I should be able to do this better. Okay, is that any better? Okay, good. All right, welcome to 3 major mistakes, actually, that SEO mistakes that bloggers make that keep them from finding and reaching their target audience. So I am very passionate about helping business owners connect with their target audiences online. And may I tell you why I'm actually very committed about doing that? Well, a lot of people, like I'm sure yourselves, we all have negative things that happen to us, and I'm no exception. When I was growing up, I had unfortunately, a lot of tension in my house because my father was an alcoholic and my mom had a very hot Hungarian temper. So in my child's mind, I decided that the best way to be able to cope with this situation was to follow that old adage, speak when spoken to. And I decided to just be quiet and not talk. And as a result, I decided that the best way for me to communicate was through writing. And that actually did serve me well. I wound up going to school and I studied mass communications in college. And eventually I found myself working for the Nightly Business Report on public television. And I was a writer and a producer for that program. And I didn't realize it at the time, but that experience absolutely served me well today in the job that I do now, in the business that I have now. Because when I was working for NBR, you had to deal with distilling complex economic stories and putting them into like 30-second sound bites for people to listen to at home. And what's important about that now is now when I'm working with business owners online, people have short attention spans. And when people are Googling for a certain, product or service that they want and they land on that website, you've only got about 5 or 7 seconds for people to say, okay, yes, this is what I want. Or no, this isn't it. And then they hit the back button and go back. And they try to find someone else. So it's been real important for me to be able to help business owners do that. So I made a clear choice to invest in myself because I realized that, number one, if I was going to start my own business, because unfortunately when the recession hit in 2008, NBR didn't need me anymore. So like any good entrepreneur, I decided to start my own business. So I was able to use some of my writing skills to do that, but I needed to learn more. So I invested in myself. I took courses in copywriting, learned how to do search engine optimization because I knew as a small business owner I needed to have a website. You've got to have a website. You've got to be able to have people find you online. So I learned how to do that. And the other part that I did was also learn how to do public speaking because if you're a small business owner, you've got to be able to, number one, just talk to clients. You've got to be able to explain what's important, what benefits your particular product or service has. And so I worked with a speaking coach to help me in being able to get over my fear of public speaking because even as an adult, I was still very shy. So now I've been able to do that, and it's helped me, and it's always gratifying when someone Googles SEO copywriter, and website shows up on page 1. It's like, shoot, thank goodness, because it gives you a little bit more credibility when you're trying to work with other business owners. So that's a little bit now about how my story has come apart. Now I'm able to help other business owners in that way. And as I said, we're going to do some questions afterwards, and I'll be happy to answer them as we get on. And I also have, if it's okay, I've got another special event that I'd like to share with you at the event too, at the end of today, where if you are interested in working with me, I have a great experience for you to do that. I also wanted to just, number one, thank you for being out here today, and want to be able to do the best job I can to explain. So let's get right into blogging mistakes. One of the most common mistakes that I've seen, and this was also kind of something that Bess touched on, when one of the first things she mentioned was how important it is to have images on your website, to have them on your blog. And unfortunately, this is one of the common mistakes that bloggers make, is that they're not optimizing those images. And what I mean by that is including keywords in the images. So for instance, if you are out, let's say you have a travel blog, for instance, and you're posting great pictures from, places around here, Disney World, SeaWorld, what have you. A lot of times if you're taking pictures, when you're taking them with your smartphone or whether you're taking them with a digital camera, when you get those files, they just have a whole bunch of numbers on them. And that's not going to do you any good, because when Google spiders are searching through the internet, and when someone is typing in a query with a particular keyword, your file that just has those numbers, it's not going to show up. So the solution for that is to make sure that you rename your picture files and make sure that you use words that describe what the image is actually all about. So let's say you took a picture of Shamu at SeaWorld. Instead of it being 6704.jpg, rename it to Shamu Universal Studios Orlando. And then make sure that you also include hyphens or dashes between each of those words, because that's going to help, again, that's going to help Google and the other search engines to go through that. Yeah.
I read something about they were recommending switching from underscore to dash in a URL. Does that have any impact on the photo tagging?
I'm not really sure. To be honest with you, I don't know that for sure, but I could certainly find out for you. Yeah, I'm not aware of that. But I will tell you one thing. I'm not like a hardcore SEO company. There's a lot of companies out there that is going to charge you, $500 a month to optimize your website and put you on dozens of, directories and all that stuff. I concentrate more on the content itself and making sure that the content. But part of doing that is making sure that your images are optimized. Now the other part that you can do besides changing the file image is, what's great about WordPress is that you can also do an alt tag. Right when you're uploading a file to WordPress, it gives you that option to put that alt tag in there, and that's where you can put keywords. And if you haven't renamed your file before you uploaded it to WordPress, you can also do it right then as well. Because I have a client who does landscape lighting, and he's always sending me pictures of the homes he does, but it's always, all these number of files. So I'm always having to say, okay, where did you take this picture? What is this of? So I'll rename it, outdoor lighting Windermere or something like that. So that's one of the main mistakes that people make. Another key mistake that SEO mistake has to do with actual keyword research. Either people aren't doing enough keyword research before they sit down to do a blog article, or they're still using the wrong words. They're not using the right words that people are using. And this is going to be a huge problem for you because, again, if you're not including certain terms in your articles that people are going to be using to search for whatever it is you're writing about, especially if you're selling a product or a service, then all that wonderful work you've done on that article is just gone for nothing. So you want to be able to do some keyword research ahead of time. And there's free tools, there's paid tools that you can use to do that. But one of the best ways that I recommend that you can do, especially for small business owners, is to focus in on what your customers want. If you answer their questions about your particular business, your product, your service, or even if it is a personal blog, if you address their needs in your articles, odds are you're going to be including those words in the content anyway. So for instance, if you sell a product, most of the time people want to know how much does it cost, right? So write about that. Write about articles, write your articles about what your product or service costs. And if it's something that's real expensive, maybe you don't want to get specific, you could still talk in general terms and give people a rough idea. But then if the title of your article, like using my client as an example, is, how much does it cost to install landscape lighting? Well, you've got landscape lighting cost right in the title, and odds are you're going to be writing, that article is going to be using those words in there as well. So that's going to be able to help you out. And so just keep in mind who your audience is and what they're looking for, and what particular information they need. And that's going to help you to be able to write your article in a way that's going to make sense. Now, if you're still stuck on how to be able to find the right words, the other great way to do it is just typing words into Google. If you type a certain phrase in and you actually go to the bottom of the page, they'll have related searches. And those will give you some ideas, too, of how to be able to find some different phrases. Because another problem that a lot of small businesses fall under is they may have an idea of what keywords to use, but when you actually do go into Google AdWords, when they have their keyword planner tool, and you put those phrases in, it may show up that there's only maybe 20 searches a month for that particular phrase. So that's not going to do you any good. At the other extreme, you may find that there's 200,000 searches a month. And that's also not going to do you a lot of good, because that means that you're competing with 200,000 other websites. So you want to try to find the nitty-gritty, kind of a sweet spot of maybe just a few thousand searches, 5,000 or so on your particular keyword phrase. So that'll be a way that you can help you in being able to find that information out. Trying to think, what was the other thing? I lost my train of thought there for a second. The third, one of the most important mistakes that I've found is, again, that a lot of small business owners get into a trap with, and they have all the best of intentions, but they're not posting consistently on their blog. They may start with all the best intentions, and they get going, and they post 4 or 5 articles in a row, and then they get busy with their work, and then they stop. And this is, again, a huge problem, because if you are, it's a big problem for 2 reasons. Number one, if you're not posting on a regular basis to your blog, then Google's not going to be able to find you. And what happens is, if you're writing about a particular subject and then you stop, well, pretty much everybody has got some sort of competitor for whatever it is you sell. And so your competitor might be posting every week on their blog. And so they're going to start showing up higher in the search engine rankings. And yours is going to be falling by the wayside. So you've got to be able to keep up with a consistent schedule. And the other part of why this is a problem is because not only is Google going to forget about you, your customers are going to forget about you too. Because, again, you're not being consistent. And if they can't see you, they're going to start, especially if they're interested in your particular subject, they're going to go ahead and read your competitor's blog. And they're going to say, then when it comes time for them to buy that, whatever they're selling, who are they going to go to? The person who's blogging every week, or the person who blogs twice a year? Yeah.
And that's something that lately I've been looking into. I have a personal blog, and I'm interested to see or know what kind of methods to kind of help with like a calendar,
Mm-hmm.
or I mean, because I have been looking at like CoSchedule. I know WordPress has a lot of different plugins, and there's also some like basic stuff that you can do on Excel, or just even I've seen some people use sticky notes. But is there something that that you might recommend, maybe like top through stuff?
Right. Well, that's actually that's what I was going to get to. Is the solution is that, and that's what I work with clients, is coming up with an editorial calendar, because that can help you then plan out what you're going to say and when you're going to say it. And there are actually Google Drive has editorial calendars right in there that you can use. They have some samples, and actually if you just Google editorial calendars, there's all sorts of different companies have samples that you can do. But even if it's just something as simple as coming up with an Excel spreadsheet and just plot it out, January, February, March, and by week, and you can be able to come up with it. The other point I was going to make too, with the lack of consistency, is that again, you're not. The more often that you can post, the more traffic you're going to get. So, for instance, even if you're only, I read this statistic recently. I think it was from HubSpot did a survey, and they found that companies that only blog 1 to 2 times a month, they still get 70% more leads than companies that don't blog at all. So even just 1 or 2 times a month, you can manage. And of course, the more often that you blog, the better, because you are going to get much more traffic the more often you can do it. But when I'm working with small business owners, especially in like solopreneurs, I know that they are strapped for time. So that's why I say if you can manage once a week, that's going to be the best. At least it's going to keep you in front of it. And what's beautiful about blogging is that then you can repurpose it, as Bess was mentioning, because then you can send out those articles in like a monthly newsletter. You can refer to it, and you can have a link to it in your newsletter and have people go back to your blog and read it, because this is giving you the material for that newsletter. Because that's another problem that many small business owners have, is like, okay, I know I should be doing email marketing, and I know I should be blogging, and I know I should be on social media. Where do I come up with all this content? Well, if you start with the blog should be the hub of your social media marketing. That's where it all starts from. And then you can, use it for videos. You can turn it into podcasts. You can, like I said, use it for email marketing. It just has so many. You can post it on Facebook and Twitter. It just has so much versatility to it that it's really the best tool. That if I was recommending anybody to get started with social media, that's the first thing I recommend you to do, is to start a blog, because that's the best way for you to be able to communicate your message and address what's important to your customers, what they need, what they're looking for. I know there's probably more, but you know what? If anybody has actually any quick questions, because I know I just rattled through 3 very fast, but if anybody has, I know there's many more, probably a couple other mistakes that people make too, but it'll come to me in a minute and I'll think of some more. But if anybody has any other questions, real quick before we get onto the next speaker, I can do that if you want. Nobody? Okay, all right. Oh, yeah.
Could you please give just a real quick summary of what just the titles of what those 3 mistakes were?
Oh, sure, absolutely. So the first thing is not optimizing your images. That's the number one. The second one is not doing keyword research, or picking the wrong words that you should be doing. And then the third one is just not posting on a consistent basis. That is the real big one. I'd say another mistake that also some bloggers get in the habit of. I think people are getting a little bit more savvy now. If you're into blogging at all, you're probably aware of Google and all their wonderful algorithm updates and the pandas and the penguins and all these things. So they want to make sure that you have good quality content. So even though you're doing keyword research, you also don't want to overdo it with keywords. You don't want to do what's called keyword stuffing, because that's going to get you penalized. And not to mention, it's really unpleasant to read. you want to be able to keep in mind, your visitor, your reader. What do they want to read? And if you're just piling on keyword after keyword, like, my white sweaters are the best white sweaters that you can find at a white sweater store, it doesn't really sound good. It doesn't make any sense. And nobody's going to want to buy those white sweaters from you. I'm sorry, no matter how many times you use that phrase. So be a little bit more natural, and you don't have to necessarily obsess about using the exact phrase in the article the whole time either. As long as you're using different words, different parts of it, a couple of times. Like I said, 2 to 3 times is fine. And that's going to get your point across. Like I said, as long as you're focusing on what your clients' needs are, or what your readers' needs, what their interests are, then you're going to be able to really please them, because you're going to be focused on what they need. And that's going to help you out in being able to have someone, when they're searching on Google, and they're going to be able to find your articles then, because you're using those words. You do want to use it in the title, and you do want to use it in the body of the article. And that will help you a lot.
Question, when you say optimize your images, do you mean naming them?
Naming them, yes. Either naming the file itself, and definitely using the alt tag is very helpful, because that's going to help you out a lot.
Also, a suggestion for people maybe have trouble with content and so forth. I would recommend one of the greatest copywriters I think ever, is Gary Halbert, Halpert. He's now dead. He lives in Key West, and he's a whole lot of somewhere, but he is, even in death, he's on the web. It's good.
That's true.
GaryHalbert.com.
Yeah.
And you'll get a tremendous amount of information
Yeah.
about how to select really good copywriting,
Yeah.
writing and sales, if you need that, marketing, that kind of thing.
Yeah, well, I would just say, for when you're writing a blog, though, even for your business, and this is, I think, a lot of where small business owners get tripped up, is that they're afraid that they don't know how to write properly, or that they think that they're going to have to write a really long article. As long as you're focused, again, on what your customers need, and you write from the heart, and you write about what you know, then don't have to worry necessarily about it being always grammatically correct. I would make sure you spell check. That's important. But grammar, sometimes you can be a little bit loose on, especially for a blog, because people understand that it's a little bit more personal, even with a small business owner. Now, your rest of your website, that you should be definitely grammatically correct, and all the good punctuation and everything for that.